Hey, everybody. I hope you're having a great morning. Hope you're having a great end to your week. I know it's Thursday. Tomorrow's the final end of the day. Today, we're talking Kenny Pickett, and we're going to talk, how is he a franchise guy? Does he have what it takes? What are his attributes? I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We do daily segments, weekly lives. We have a Friday night Q&A. I'll be out at training camp this year. You don't want to miss any of the content, so please hit that like and subscribe button. With that being said, guys, I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers, and welcome to the Huddle. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about Kenny Pickett. He was the 20th overall pick in the first round in this last draft from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there's been a lot of debate and conversation ever since he's been drafted as to whether or not he's if we overdrafted him, is he going to be the franchise guy? Is he the heir apparent? Well, that debate started and sparked up and ended up turning into an article between Scott Pavelle and Nathan Tewkesbury. Now, Scott and Nathan, they're both Scott's with the Steelers Depot, and apparently they sparked up a conversation that ended up in an article that I read, and it was very entertaining and very interesting. Nathan, if you're watching, I honestly, if you like, I'd like to have you on the show and talk to you a little bit more. And I found your comments to be very insightful. And so basically, the article was generated was the debate as far as Kenny Pickett goes at number 20. Scott tend to think that Kenny Pickett's ceiling, so to speak, is like an Andy Dalton, a middle of the range kind of guy, a person who can be successful depending on the team that's around him. And Nathan kind of argues back and forth with him, talks about, the it factor that Kenny Pickett has. But, I've had some people on the show, some guests, some YouTube creators, and some Steeler minds. And I asked them, let's go back to draft night. Let's talk Kenny Pickett. And I'll take this opportunity to do so with myself. And so prior to the draft, I wasn't too keen on drafting a quarterback. All the arrows were pointing in that direction for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody knew that they were going to go that direction. It's very similar to the Najee Harris pick last year, where everybody knew that Najee Harris was going to be the next Steeler. And so with that being said, I think the writing was on the wall that we're going to get a quarterback, and a quarterback that had experience and that was pro ready. And the reason I say that is if we were going to go pick up a quarterback that had potential or was full of potential, we already had that quarterback on the roster at the time of the acquisition of Mitch Trubisky. And so I feel that if we were going to go with potential, then we wouldn't even have picked up Mitch Trubisky at that point either. If you link back, we had the late Dwayne Haskins on the roster. May he rest in peace. However, he had an ability to throw the ball that was uncanny to any of the other quarterbacks on the roster, including Ben Roethlisberger last year. Ben Roethlisberger came out several times stating that Dwayne Haskins can throw a football through a car wash and not get wet. So with that being said, if the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to go based on attributes and skill, so to speak, I think they would have kind of put a little bit more eggs in the basket of Dwayne Haskins, and instead of drafting a quarterback in a quote-unquote weak quarterback class. Now, even that quarterback class and where quarterbacks are drafted or selected, if it was down to a science and everybody got it right, then you wouldn't see quarterbacks being drafted in late rounds, such as Russell Wilson in the third or Tom Brady in the sixth, and you wouldn't see first round picks on Ryan Leaf or a Josh Rosen or whatnot. And so because of that, because you don't know, and because it's such an unknown as far as how the college quarterback is going to transfer the information and everything that they've gathered to a complex game in the NFL. And so I think that a lot of coaches, that were offensive gurus turn head coaches fail because they end up taking a rookie quarterback and try to implement a complex game plan, and usually doesn't work. I digress. So let's go back to draft night. I wasn't keen on getting a quarterback, to be 110% honest with you guys. I was hoping that the Pittsburgh Steelers would move up and get a Kyle Hamilton or a Jordan Davis. I thought, honestly, we could use, those two positions at the, throughout majority of the offseason. We had an opening at the strong safety position. And so I felt that getting Kyle Hamilton would be a huge benefit But it didn't happen. He's in the purple, and now we have to move on. And so, after all those things happened, and we ended up at 20 and not moved up, and all the quarterbacks were there. All the writing was on the wall that we were going to get a QB. Now, I should have seen that. Like I said earlier, that we were probably going to go with a quarterback that's more pro ready. And I was surprised in the pick of Kenny Pickett. It took me by shock initially, and I'll be honest, I wasn't too keen on it. And it's not because I didn't, the hand size or anything. I'm not really a follower of college football or pit football. What did it for me? What made the concern for me is I watch a lot of Steelers, content, and a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers creators are also pit creators, and one in general. Deke from the Arthur Moats and Deke Experience podcast. Throughout the year last year, Arthur Moats kind of picked and poked at him about, having Kenny Pickett be the heir apparent for Ben Roethlisberger. And he was always kind of shunning that option and not liking that idea. Now, I know it was more because of his love for Ben Roethlisberger versus the ability of Kenny Pickett. However, having a person from Pittsburgh who follows Pitt and a fan of Pitt, not really a big fan of the idea of having their quarterback, our future quarterback, kind of was concerning to me. I know that he had basically kind of come out of nowhere, didn't do too well in his first few seasons, and had a breakout season in a quote unquote weak year for the I believe they're called the ACC. And so, with all that being said, once the Pittsburgh Steelers selected Kenny Pickett, I was like, okay, let's look at it. Let's look at him. Let's see what's going on. I know the talking heads are going to be talking bad about him just because they want to have something to talk about. And so let's go into it and let's see what he has. And in the article from Scott here in Steelers Depot, and I'll go ahead and put the article in the description there. He goes in and kind of says that the ceiling for Kenny Pickett is kind of, I'm paraphrasing here, but the ceiling for Kenny Pickett is relatively low. He's going to be a middle range quarterback and Andy Dalton, and could be successful with a team around him. And like I mentioned before, Nathan stated in this that Pickett kind of had that it factor at the end. He didn't get rattled when things got tough. He was, an attribute that is famously known from Ben Roethlisberger. Mike Tomlin has said many times that when things got tight, Ben Roethlisberger stayed the same. And he's always been this way throughout his entire career, going back to the Super Bowls, especially with the throw to Santonio Holmes. There was no other clutch throw or game other than that. And so with the Steelers staff seeing that and knowing that that's a huge, attribute to have, that is one thing that they went out and searched for, and that's the other thing that was great about this is the Steelers had their choice of any quarterback, and they made sure to go and watch these quarterbacks play live in their arena multiple times a year, or also on the road as well. And they got to know these guys. They got to have their pick. They did their due diligence. It would be different had, for instance, maybe Malik Willis gotten selected by, or Desmond Ridder had gotten selected by the Carolina Panthers or the Falcons or something earlier on in the first round, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers selected Kenny Pickett afterwards. The question would always be there, was Kenny Pickett the Pittsburgh Steelers guy? And now there is no question that was probably their first pick if they would have been number one overall. Now, before we get into Kenny Pickett's style and what I think he can do, I am extremely happy that we got Kenny Pickett with the 20th pick. The Pittsburgh Steelers admittedly stated that they were trying to move up in the draft to get him. And one thing that Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin like to do is when they do draft picks and they trade them and whatnot, they like to attribute players to that draft pick. And so it's very easy to see that the Pittsburgh Steelers could have easily given up a George Pickens to move up to get Kenny Pickens. And knowing that now, the deal sounds extremely way better knowing that we got Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, and DeMarvin Leal 1, 2, 3 versus Kenny Pickett gave up a second pick and then got DeMarvin Leal, and later Calvin Austin third as a receiver. So with all that said, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers did their due diligence. They went out there, they did their homework, and they had their opportunity to pick their guy, and they got their guy. Now, as far as trying to compare quarterbacks, as far as who they think they are and where they're going to go based on history, based on what they were able to do with the college and whatnot, or based on situations like Joe Burrow, coming out late or being a player that was cool under pressure. I like to look at styles of quarterbacks. I like to look at a demeanor in which they play. And when I look at Kenny Pickett, and I've been watching him here recently, one thing that he likes to do is he's able to be mobile and scramble and move around and find open receivers and accurately throw on the run. And he reminds me very much of Steve Young, to be honest with you, who also wore number 8 and who also was an heir apparent to a first ballot Hall of Famer in Joe Montana. It's I think that if you go back and look at Steve Young, he was a mobile quarterback. He wasn't a speedy guy like Lamar Jackson. He wasn't going to outrun everybody on the field. But he, at the time in which he was playing, an era in which he played, he was, a mobile quarterback in a league of statues, so to speak. But he still wasn't faster than the defensive backs or even majority of the linebackers. He was just, at their speed and able to move and be mobile and avoid being hit. Now, one thing that he was also able to do is throw over the middle on the run accurately. And that's one thing that I can attribute to Kenny Pickett. And so when you have a quarterback who is cerebral, he understands the defenses, makes right decisions, can elude the defense and look down the field and make accurate throws, I think that's a combination for success. I don't understand why people try to give ceilings on players who haven't even taken a snap. That makes no sense to me. Until Kenny Pickett goes out there and shows that he's an Andy Dalton, I don't think we should put that label on him. But everybody's going to look at this one way or another, whether the glass is half full or half empty. It's just going to take until they suit up and actually show up on what they can do. But with that said, I think that there's a lot of things being said about the Pittsburgh Steelers and about Kenny Pickett just to get clickbaits and views and things of that nature. And I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers got a steal in this player. Having the first quarterback selected in the draft and having them at 20 without having to give up any draft capital, that's a huge win. That's a huge win. And I look forward to seeing what he does. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers, and like I said before, the best thing about this entire situation is that the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to go in there and do their due diligence and select the quarterback of their choosing with every quarterback option available without having to give up any draft capital. At the end of the day, like I mentioned before, and I mentioned it in the past, if it was down to a science and the NFL and the scouting team and everybody knew exactly, which players were going to be Hall of Famers and this and that, you wouldn't see, players of high status get selected later rounds and you wouldn't see any draft busts. But those things happen continually and year after year, which only means that nothing's perfect. Nobody knows everything. Nothing is going to be, everything's going to be right, And it boils down to also Nathan had made a comment on one of our videos in referencing to my conversation with Devin Angle, and where Devin stated that Deontay Johnson wasn't his separation skills weren't the best, and which I think that Deontay Johnson, that being his best attribute, is separation. He's unguardable. He's very good against one-on-one or even, double team or getting stacked and getting open. The problem with Deontay Johnson, in my opinion, is balls over 15 yards and, situational football where it's third down or high pressure situations. I was watching the week 18 game against the Ravens here recently, just today, actually. And, just kind of watching the game over, it was the last game of the year. It was, we won and the Colts lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We were going into the playoffs. And, there was a third down and probably 8 or so. We were around the 40 or between the 40 and the 50 on the Baltimore side going in. And it was in the fourth quarter and the ball was thrown underneath. Now, I don't think if Deontay Johnson catches that ball, he's getting a first down, but he definitely puts us in Boswell's kicking range. And the way Bos was kicking last year, it's points on the board. And he dropped it. It forced us to punt. And so I just feel that that happens way too often with Deontay. I think that we don't have a receiver like him on our depth chart, so I for sure see him playing this year. I do not foresee the Steelers extending him past this year for a large lump of money. Maybe perhaps if he plays himself very well, the Steelers will franchise tag him next year. Pittsburgh Steelers are not a team that usually give second contracts, so unless he balls out and really shows something with a quarterback that's a little bit more mobile and can throw the ball down the field and put the ball in position for him to make plays with it, then maybe he'll earn a bag, but that'll be that'll be yet to see. And going back to Mr. Ingles' comment on it, at the end of the day, not everybody's perfect, and I'm not going to hold him down to it and say, hey, you were wrong. I was during the season, I'm going to have a segment or a show called State of the Steelers Spygate, where I will be bringing on either a fan or a YouTube creator of the opposing team that will be playing that week, just to talk and maybe go through some film of the opposing team to see maybe what the Steelers will need to do to win or to be competitive in the game. And one of my good friends, his name is Chris. He's a huge fan of the Saints, and he'll be coming on here shortly to kind of give us a Spygate on the NFC South. And while I was showing him what I was doing, I realized that on my video with Miles Jack, I called the inside linebacker that plays next to Miles Jack an outside linebacker, and I was like, oh man, I messed up there. It happens. Now in my situation, it was more about calling the position wrong, and in Devin, he just kind of had the whole situation wrong about what Deontay Johnson can do. But he's a human being. I'm not going to, degrade the guy for it. It happens. And so I forgive him, and I'm sure most of the Steelers fan base do as well. But that's all I got for you guys today. I wanted to make sure that I answered Nate. I wanted to give Nathan my input on this article, especially. It's very great. I highly recommend you guys go in there and look at it. Nathan puts out some, great stats and information on why he thinks that Kenny Pickett's going to be a great quarterback. And I believe him. I honestly do. I really, really dislike when people start putting ceilings on individuals who haven't even taken a snap yet. That's poor. That's lazy work, in my opinion. And so, I look forward to it. I'm excited. Like I said before, and just to kind of, run down what I said earlier is, early on, I wasn't thrilled. It took me a second, to come to the idea that we had drafted a quarterback. And then, once I got to dive deep and put the noise to the side that came from mainstream media and actually watch what Kenny Pickett did or does, I found him to be a very excellent quarterback. The only concerning things that I really was concerned about is he's got what I call his happy feet, where in certain situations he's kind of pitter-pattering in the pocket there with his feet. But the Pittsburgh Steelers did something that they haven't done from my knowledge ever, is hire a second quarterback coach. Now that came in before the draft in anticipation, again, which was writing on the wall. The Pittsburgh Steelers were probably going to draft a QB. But, bringing in a second QB coach to help him out on those fundamental things and on those detail work, so to speak, is going to be huge for him. And I think that, and I mentioned it before, when, excuse me, when I've been asked several times, who do you want to start week one? And my answer is I would prefer a ready Kenny Pickett. A Kenny Pickett who has played 4 to 5 preseason games, who has had most of the reps throughout the offseason and training camp and mini camp and OTAs, and is well prepared for week one. The fact that we have 3 preseason games going into camp in a quarterback battle with three chefs in the kitchen, so to speak, limiting the reps, I don't think that's going to make an ideal situation for Kenny Pickett. I think that's not going to make an ideal situation for any of those quarterbacks. But given the resume of Mitch Trubisky and what he has already been done in the league and his experience, I think he can best handle that situation going into week one. And so based on the situation, I think Mitch Trubisky is going to be the week one starter. However, I think that leash is short, guys. Think back to 2019 when Mason Rudolph was the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers due to Ben Roethlisberger's injury. That leash wasn't very long after he came back when they put in, to put Duck in. He had 1.5 games that were pretty horrible against the Browns and then the Bengals the following week, where he threw multiple interceptions. And when he came out against the Bengals, he was yanked before the fairly quick. That leash was short for a camp arm. Think about that. And so now that we have the heir apparent and Kenny Pickett behind Mitch Trubisky, I don't think that leash is going to be very long. I think that after the Cleveland Browns game, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are not at least 2-1 going into week 4 and that mini bye, then that's when the switch is made to Kenny Pickett. That's all I got for you guys. That's my opinion. That's my idea. That's what I think is going to happen. That's what I think about Kenny Pickett and his potential this year to be great. I think Kenny Pickett eventually will be the heir apparent and will do some great things, but we can't pressure it and we can't speed it up or force the issue. And let's let the organization do what they do best and develop this team into what they, into a championship winning team. I know that back in the day when Martavis Bryant and other receivers would come out, they wouldn't play right away in the first week. It'd take some time to come in, and then they did some great stuff. Who's to say that had they came in week 1 that they would have been doing, such great stuff, and who's to say that wouldn't affected their confidence later on? And so the Pittsburgh Steelers know what they're doing. They have developed crazy, great talent from all over the place, from the first round to the 6th round to the undrafted. I have full faith in the organization and Mike Tomlin that they will get this done right and they will get this done correct. And I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to shock some people. I really do. I truly do. I think that this season is going to be one for the memories, from the memory bank, so to speak, because this is going to be a season that when everybody had their backs to the Pittsburgh Steelers, the black and gold faithful stayed in there, hung in tight, knew what was up, and then showed up during the season. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers. Please hit that like and subscribe button. And with that being said,